Oh,
Okay.
you guys are running big leagues now, huh? Oh, here we go.
You put a keyboard in front of me. I'm dangerous, Jason.
I'd like to call to order the workshop of January 3rd, 2022. First on the agenda is an executive session to to discuss an economic development matter pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Counselor Staples, second from Counselor Gary. All those in favor? We now stand in executive session. Okay, good evening. Next on the agenda, we have proposed zone changes. We got Eric Cousin and John Blay presenting today. Gentlemen, can get going.
Thank you, Mr.
Floor is
Mayor
yours.
and City Council. Wanted to start just by talking a little bit about what was done in 2021. 2020 and 2021, the goal was set by the council to make room for 2,000 new residents by 2025. The last council worked on that by expanding our form-based code, really to encourage more house lots, more development potential to be available in what's been termed the walkability market. So in town, water and sewer, higher density, walkable neighborhoods, walkable streets. Also to increase flexibility for secondary dwelling units, both of which are also recommendations coming out of the state Housing Commission. Auburn's a little bit ahead on adopting those. The council did approve an ordinance that allows anywhere that we allowed 2 families, which was most of Auburn, to allow a second dwelling unit to be built on a property and not make them build it in the same building as the primary unit. Density in downtown and urban residential core. Really, that's a way to push new housing units towards our urban core where we can service them most efficiently, and also service that walkability market. Really look at expanding higher density residential uses where infrastructure exists, a recommendation that came out of the comp plan and has been in previous plans. We'll talk a little bit about a couple of changes that can do that tonight. And then in December of 2021, the council adopted the amendments to the comprehensive plan, including a new future land use map, and really set us up for the discussion that we'll have in the rest of this workshop item tonight. First 4, these are projects that have been sort of highlighted, talked a lot about, ordinance changes that have been talked a lot about during the process, and also have some potential for projects that would occur on land that would be affected by these changes. The first one, the Gracelawn area, large gravel pits just to the north of Gracelawn Road between Gracelawn and Lake Auburn. The second one, the Washington Street area, we'll talk more about these when we move on from this summary. Basically from Minot Avenue out Washington Street to almost to the Turnpike. And then Court Street, city core urban residential area. So if you can picture the whole hillside along Court Street, over towards Lake Street, down towards Minot Avenue, Ruper's Fire Department area, in that area. And then the fourth one, subsurface wastewater disposal in the Lake Auburn Watershed. Both the comp plan by adopting, referencing the Lake Auburn Watershed study and the Lake Auburn Watershed study itself, prioritized considering changing our septic standards in the Lake Auburn Watershed to provide for better treatment. And I think a big part of the discussion will be also about how development occurs within the watershed as part of that. The first one, Gracelawn, large, I'm sure you recognize it driving by a public works facility across the road, large gravel pit area. The city's landfill is on one side of that, St. Dom's Community College on the eastern side, and then on the western side would remain as agriculture and resource protection. The commercial development district was first proposed in the city's 2010 comprehensive plan. It was reaffirmed in the most recent updates, and also with the Lake Auburn Watershed study, we were better able to define which parts of that area are not actually draining towards Lake Auburn and really should not have been considered part of the Lake Auburn Watershed. Highlights of this district would be, commercial uses that are allowed, business uses, business offices, retail, but also residential development in both low or high density within that area. So really a true mixed-use residential area. This shows the map. The blue line on the left-hand image, current zoning, shows that gravel pit area The blue line is the edge of the Lake Auburn watershed as we have had it mapped, and it's followed Grace Lawn. Since that was originally mapped, the gravel mining operations in that area have changed the topography. It's obvious driving by that those pits are entirely internally drained now, so there's no chance of surface water within that area making its way to the lake. On top of that, there's been a lot of groundwater monitoring done for the city's landfill, which we're very fortunate to find that the water, groundwater in that area is generally moving away from the lake. So any areas where you don't have groundwater moving towards the lake or surface water is not in the Lake Auburn watershed. It really, because of those changes and because of the data that we have, if it doesn't drain towards the lake, it's not part of the watershed. It's as simple as that. So this proposal, you can see you can't see my cursor up there. On the proposed change, the dark orange area to the north of the line labeled current watershed boundary, that's the area that the 2010 comp plan recommended going to a commercial business development district. And with the Lake Auburn watershed, the better mapping, the analysis of groundwater movement, the comp plan and the Lake Auburn watershed study from 2021 are recommending that new blue line to the north be the actual boundary, and that follows the topography. The high point that would potentially drain to the lake to the north of that, anything to the south of that is draining away from the lake into the gravel pit, and then the groundwater moving away from the lake. These are graphics, you have them in your packet. The groundwater modeling on the left, and then on the right, basically the same lines you saw in the last image, but shows that red circle on both images so you can kind of picture the way that the arrows are showing that the groundwater moves in those areas. The entire area that we are proposing for removal, almost the entire area. You can see there are a couple of areas that are slightly outside of that blue line. Those are areas that have not yet been graded to drain internally, but would remain subject to, even though they're in the commercial zone, to follow the property boundaries. They'd either remain subject to the Lake Auburn watershed standards, or they'd have to be adjusted to drain internally, and some of that adjustment is already happening with the existing gravel mining approvals. The second one, there was a lot of discussion in the transportation chapter and the future land use chapter along the Washington Street corridor. Currently, most of this is in the general business zoning district. A little bit of it is in the industrial. This area is proposed to become the commercial form-based code gateway district, is what it was termed, and really a shift from high-speed mobility corridor kind of oriented development, the mix of junkyards and older non-conforming uses that we have along Washington Street, to a district that would allow for mixed use. The in-town portion of that, I think, will be relatively simple. This may be split into a couple of pieces, a piece that we can accomplish rather immediately, and then the out-of-town portion is really also going to be dependent on transportation changes that happen over a much longer period of time, where we try to move two-way traffic into what's now Washington Street South and make Washington Street North also two-way traffic, but much slower moving, buildings closer to the street, a walkable corridor. That really can't be implemented entirely until some of the transportation changes are further along, but we think there is an opportunity to implement the in-town portions of it and set that zoning up for a better mix of uses along Minot Avenue to the Rotary and a little ways out of town before the Washington Street North and South separate. So I'll hand it over to John for the traditional neighborhood development district, the Court Street area I mentioned. You can use that mic if you want to shift through, or do you want to?
Traditional neighborhood development court district is really Court Street, and it's really the core of the community, and it's urban. Currently, right now, it's urban development, looking it to be more flexible with low and high density residential dwellings, home occupations. community service and government uses and small offices and mixed-use buildings. This really goes along with the, you know, what we're proposing in the updated comp plan from developing the core and then out. So starting with that progression. Here's basically what we're looking at. It's about 1,600 or so acres, converting urban residential to traditional neighborhood development. A lot of this area, as we drove through it, about 70 to 80% of it is actually non-conforming lots. So this really kind of brings it together to make it conforming and really utilizes some of that open space that we still have in this area to really maximize the build out in this core where we should be having it. That's supported by, most importantly, by sewer and water. I think those are the most important pieces that where this higher density development really should take place. This is a septic. This is basically a recommendation from FB Environmental that we take a look at the septic design, and it wasn't really clear in the FB Environmental report on how we do that. And you know, essentially what we did is we kind of came up with some sketches. Go on to the next one. On the right is really the existing soil profile for the best types of soil that you could have out there in terms of attenuation of phosphorus and nitrogen, right? If we talk about protecting the Lake Auburn, which is obviously our public water supply, what we do is we try to do that with a septic bed design that mimics natural soils that brings you to the 36 inches. So what we're proposing here is with the planning board and with professionals, a peer review, in particular, we're working with Dave Roque, a retired soil scientist, on what that might look like, what that profile might look like in the septic system. And how can we get that P&N? And then secondly, how can we, you know, in the current septic systems that we have now, if it does have 36 inches to the limiting factor, right, that's where the seasonal high water table is. It's usually really sandy soils. So what that means is it's well draining, it's quick. And what we're not doing is we're not doing a good job of capturing the P and the N and the nitrates and the phosphorus in that column and in that design. And this really gives you the opportunity to do that. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, so the state standard says 12 inches or 9 inches, however you want to interpret it, or 15 inches if you're in the shoreline zone. We're saying let's build a layer that really traps that P and N. This is an opportunity, I think, for the city. This is an opportunity where we can really grab existing homes, new homes, and then the homes that are really that don't really necessarily, that homes built from, say, 86, 83, somewhere in that area, that use just today's standards, right? So now we implement that on those homes as well. So we build this layer and capture the nitrogen and the phosphorus. And I think it's a good opportunity. And this is kind of just a sketch on what it would look like. I think we work through in the planning board. I think we work with the professional scientists, the engineers, to really, finalize what the sieve analysis looks. That top 6 inches, really looking at loam, easily attainable materials for construction that can be applied in the face of the earth, right? So during construction, and keep costs low. But at the same time, what we're doing is, from an economic standpoint, we're buying those residents of the city of Auburn a good quality product, something that's going to last a long time, and that we know at the same time we're protecting the environment. Not only on the existing, not only on the new units, but the existing systems as well. So I think that's important to note. Again, one other point here, and you'll see in the drawing, we have a lot of slopes here. Everything goes down to the lake, right? We're talking about a watershed, high up, everything flows down. And typically, we're worried about groundwater oversaturating the field. So we're proposing a curtain drain, which basically captures any of the groundwater that's going to come into the field, right? So we're always worried about overloading the system. And again, it's all about protecting to the watershed. We need to protect the watershed. This is our best opportunity to do that now. And this is in my opinion, from a scientific and from an engineering standpoint. I've worked 10 years designing septic systems. And I think that this is, from an environmental standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, and from a septic system, quality product, end user, to the citizens of Auburn, this is our best opportunity.
I think one of the criticisms of our existing standard is that it wasn't accomplishing systems that were highly functional. They were in too well-drained soils. This really is an opportunity, I think, to not only make sure that new systems are sited in the best soils that they can be and actually import soils to make sure the soils are providing the best treatment, but as John mentioned, and we can work on getting data on this as we move through the public discussion. There's a lot more existing systems in the Lake Auburn watershed than there are new systems. So we can start to understand that as those get replaced, what percentage do we anticipate to even be new systems, and know that the systems that have been traditionally replaced in the watershed to meet the state standard, if this is implemented, will actually meet a higher standard than the existing.
One other item that I didn't talk about is implementing, and we're currently talking, we've already talked to the planning board about this, is updating our phosphorus control plan. And with that is utilizing what's considered low-impact development techniques. Curtain drains is a low-impact development technique. We can implement a low-impact development technique to new construction that impacts the watershed within Lake Auburn. So I think everything kind of coming together to make a better product and to protect our public water supply is perfect timing.
And what we're looking for is any feedback from you on which ones or all of these you want us to start working on in getting the actual draft text and maps to the planning board for a public hearing, and then have the planning board make a recommendation on those and send them back to you ultimately for a decision on which ones to adopt and implement those recommendations of the comp plan.
Eric, I believe tonight the order has all three. I don't believe the order stipulates a prioritization level on any of these three.
It has all four, yeah.
Oh, sorry, four.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I apologize. All four of them. So what I'd like to do, this is going to be on our agenda for tonight. We're going to be actually debating it and then voting on it. Instead of having anecdotal prioritization based upon personal, preference, and that could go down. We've done that before. It can go down a rabbit hole. I'd like to do is let's have this conversation when it comes up in our regular meeting. If that's okay with everybody? That way it'd be more efficient. We can actually finish our workshop on time. We have a couple other items to go over. And then you gentlemen are going to be here anyways for that vote. We can bring you back up, have any other questions we can ask. Okay, fair enough?
Yep.
Fair enough? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions, or we'll take them in the meeting.
We'll do all the questions when we actually make a motion and bring the order up on the floor.
Okay. And the last slide that we have is just a schedule.
sorry.
If you forward those, we'd plan on working those through planning board February and March, and not necessarily wait for all of them to be ready to come back to you, but as we get them through that public process with a recommendation, bring them back to the council as soon as they're ready. So hopefully you'll be working on some the end of February, and then the final ones March to April.
So on the timing, do you anticipate, let's say we said all four recommendations have equal prioritization. Would that schedule still hold true? Could it be possible to have all four done by April?
So I think that we can have a draft to the board on 2 or 3 of those in February. The fourth one might take till March, but then it's going to depend on somewhat on how quickly the planning board moves through that public process as well. But I think we can easily have 2 ready for February, maybe 3, and have the other 2 ready for March, and then be back to you in March and April.
And this is assuming 1 planning board meeting per month, correct?
That's correct.
That's a variable that could be also taken into consideration.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is Downtown Revitalization Plan by Jen Brinchick. And after this, if time permitting, we're going to enter into our last executive session of the evening. That was scheduled at the end of the meeting. We'll try to do it before. So Jay, and that's with Jay and Jen as well. So we'll let them dictate the tempo on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few months ago, we gave you a presentation for the Downtown Revitalization Plan, which can be found at goauburn.me. At the time, we said we'd get back to you with updates as we move through the Downtown Revitalization Plan. So the purpose today is to give you a couple of updates, but on top of that, many of our city councilors that are in seats tonight were not when we gave the original plan, so we want you to see the Downtown Revitalization Plan. One of our biggest updates is the fact that we actually have hired our downtown coordinator, and that's Jennifer Bonig, and I'll let her introduce herself very briefly.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Bonig. I'm the new downtown coordinator. This is my 3rd week. I've got to experience the New Year's Auburn event, which was amazing. You have a fantastic team of people here. I'm super excited to be here. Prior to this, I was doing communications work at Community Concepts. I've also worked at the Oxford Hills Chamber of Commerce and have experience with dealing with businesses and community residents. So I'm looking forward to jumping right in and getting started.
Okay, so some of you have seen the downtown revitalization. For those of you who have not, what I want to let you know is this downtown revitalization plan actually comes right from the strategic plan that was done in 2019. If you look at, I believe it's page 22, with your growth goal statements, you talked about downtown as well as business park. This revitalization plan covers your downtown solutions for transformational actions. It follows this exact same plan. So you'll see here walkability, Great Falls Plaza, Downtown Management District, Arts and Entertainment. That follows exactly what the strategic plan had called for the city. Now, what we are considering downtown is Great Falls Plaza, the downtown area that we are currently in now, as well as the corridors that lead into New Auburn. As you know, the city's been working on form-based code, and the adoption of form-based code throughout our downtown areas really laid the foundation for more opportunities for mixed use and offers developers increased flexibility and better opportunity to have return on their investment. Our approach to downtown redevelopment is a interdepartmental approach. Granted, all departments work together, but what we've really done is we've taken a look at the CIP, we've taken a look at our infrastructure, we've taken a look at our assets, we've taken a look at our events and activities, and had all departments, had meetings with them to see how we could all fit in and what we could do to have just all of us working in the same direction to redevelop, revitalize downtown. So the first transitional action is walkability. Now, when I go through this revitalization plan, I'll let you know the parts that Jennifer is going to be able to help with, and the other parts she'll just be coordinating and a touch point for. But we asked in our plan to expand sidewalks and crosswalk lips and remove sidewalk posts and signs, narrow Court Street to 2 lanes with parking and sidewalks to slow down traffic, increase outdoor seating and dining opportunities. And so we are headed right on our way for that with the Court Street improvements. That's probably 2 years out, 2 to 5 years. And this will be narrowing of the street, increasing parking opportunities. Library Avenue. This is one where it's primarily getting our pavement up to snuff and increasing the walkability with lighting, landscaping of our downtown. And you'll see, I'm not going to cover everything, but we've got the project costs here. Now, Elm, High, Minot, Academy, pedestrian and intersection improvements, most of this has essentially been done for a total cost of $1.6 million. Then we take a look at downtown. Excuse me, I have lost control of my So one of the things that has been talked about is that we don't currently have a parking problem in downtown, but if we are able to follow through with some of our plans to bring additional businesses and additional housing into downtown, we'll want to, every step of the way, consider parking and what we need to do for parking. And so I don't want you to look at this and say, well, this is exactly what we plan on doing for parking, but there's already been some conversations in the past, and something we can work toward is making Mechanics Row a 2-way street. When and if we do that, we can bump the street out a little further toward the bank, which would create some additional parking right along here. With that said, one of the roles that Jennifer is playing is we know we don't have a parking issue now, but with the different scenarios, what would our parking issues be in the future? So she is gathering information on how many parking spots we have in the parking garage, how many are permitted, how many are available, scenarios of what we could do to change the way the permits are, how many parking spots we have on all our streets in downtown, and whether we can add some signage to drive people more toward the parking garage. So she will be working on looking at parking for downtown for future development. Now, New Auburn Village Center revitalization. Essentially, as most of you know, New Auburn will be, most of the areas of New Auburn will be getting new pavement, sidewalks, curbing, landscaping, hardscaping, and that's going to begin in this summer, along with Second, Dunn, Fourth, and Loring Streets with new pavement. And then also Mill, Maine, and Broad. And then there have been talks about Festival Plaza redesign. This is something that could happen. I think one of the things we noticed was a big thing when we put on the New Year's Eve event is we realized we don't have enough power in Festival Plaza. So we're thinking about hardscape, landscape, and these things, and our city electrician had to spend a great deal of time just getting things set up so we could do an event. So I think we'll as Jennifer puts on events and we really start using that plaza even more, we'll see what other sort of infrastructure side of things we may need in Festival Plaza. Here, we did a walk with, Public Works along the river. One of the things we want to do is when we have events, or anything going on in the downtown, we want to incorporate the river. To date, we've had events, but we haven't had the use of the river incorporated with our events. So perhaps we can do have Parks and Rec teach fly fishing down on the river. Perhaps we can do kayak lessons down at the river and do these things in conjunction with some of the events that we already have going on. Here is the pocket park that we talked about. This is right behind where 186 Main Street is. It's a nice little area, and most of what you're looking at right there is invasive species that need to be removed anyway. So we could clean this up and at a minimal cost create an additional park. Then we have the redevelopment of Great Falls Plaza area. Right now, really what we're looking at is we've got some major infrastructure that needs to be put in place there. Major drainage infrastructure upgrade is needed to prepare Great Falls Plaza for redevelopment. The estimated cost is in excess of $800,000, and we do have funding, competing priorities for other city projects. So as you go through all the costs of things, this is something to be considered. The other thing is Great Falls, the city of Lewiston needs a redundant water line, and that's going to run somewhere along or through or by Great Falls Plaza. So with that said, we need to finish the negotiation with that, get that in place before we can really start development of Great Falls Plaza. Downtown Management District. Again, this is what we are considering the Downtown Management District. The strategic plan called for a mix of uses: shopping, ground floor retail, unique goods, market rate housing, and then it also called for the hiring of a downtown coordinator, which we have done with Jennifer. We need to, you can't really take a look at your downtown and your Main Street and say we're going to revitalize it without at least considering the Main Street program. So one of the things that Jennifer will be doing is meeting with the Maine Development Foundation, assessing the Main Street program to see if this is a program we want to participate in or not. There are, as with any program, there are lots of pros and cons to being a part of one of these programs. So that's what Jennifer will get back to us and report to us on. The other thing is, there's the possibility to just be an affiliate member of the Main Street program, which is a sister program to the full membership, and perhaps that would be something we do instead if we do not do. Now, we also need to have some financial incentives and business attraction programs specific for downtown. We currently can use tax increment financing, but this is really something that makes sense for somebody who's developing a larger parcel, a big property. It doesn't necessarily help the small business person who's looking to renovate a space in the downtown area and they need some help with financing or incentives. So one of the things you're going to see in the coming weeks, I believe, maybe months, but I'm hoping weeks, is a proposal that we're working with the Department of Business and Community Development on a revolving loan program and where those funds would come from. And this would be either zero interest or very low interest loan program. We could also use this money to help with change of use. As many of you probably know, if you go into a space that used to be retail and now you want to put a coffee shop, depending on the building, you may have to sprinkle that space, and that becomes extremely expensive. So what can we do to help small businesses with change of use financially? And this is something we may be able to work on in conjunction with the Auburn Housing Authority. We might be able to use CBDG grant funds. We're working on that as well. And then we have a lot of businesses, and a lot of people have done a great job of fixing up their homes and their businesses in the downtown area, but we've got a long way to go, and so we may come up with a facade grant or low-interest loan program. And all of this really would make sense if we do put these types of programs together. We probably want to create a community development corporation in which we can actually run these programs through. It's a nonprofit, it's community-based, and it's got its own board of directors. So it is an additional group, but it's a way for us to help downtown grow. One of the other things that we could possibly do is you hear about business plan contests, and I'm a fan of them, but I also am a bigger fan of having it pointed and directed at a particular goal. For example, if we do a business plan contest and it's just for the City of Auburn and 3 new businesses open around Auburn, that is great for Auburn. But what's even better is if we can focus it on the downtown area, and if all of a sudden you get 3 new businesses in New Auburn or 3 new businesses right in downtown, that really helps to move the needle a lot quicker than it does when you spread out your programs. We may even want to do something like a business incubator. And when I say business incubator, I'm thinking about something similar to the storage container cluster incubator that they have on Washington Avenue in Portland. This is something that could be done at Anniversary Park. It could be done in the parking lot right here in downtown, right by the parking garage. And then we have talked about, and I've updated you a number of times, so I won't get into great detail, but we have all of these sites for the city, 7 of them all together, that are up for sale for redevelopment or development. And we have interest on just about every one of these sites, and we hope in the coming months to be able to report out to you and make some announcements as to what those are for each one of those sites. The one site that we still work pretty hard on and struggle with is the St. Louis Church. But we're putting together, we've had some structural reports done, some engineering studies, some environmental studies, and we're putting together a new marketing campaign for this so that developers can get the idea of what they can do with this and what would cost them to do it, rather than them have to submit the letter of intent and then get into due diligence to figure out what the costs would be. And then arts and entertainment. This is an area where Jennifer will be helping us a great deal. We already have a lot of programming that exists. We may add additional programming in events, or at least take those events that we have and try to bring additional value to those events. You know, one of the things that comes to mind for me is I went to one of these concerts on Wednesday nights in Festival Plaza, and I saw people park in the parking lot. They walked over, they saw the music, they enjoyed it, and then they walked back and got in their car. And the whole time I was thinking, if they're not a crowd, they want to maybe eat or drink something while they're sitting there at the event. So if we can create a program where the downtown restaurants can actually sell or something to these people so that they can have something to eat or drink while they're enjoying the concert, that, you know, a lot of these events we're doing to try to stimulate our economy, but with the way they currently go, they could be stimulating our economy a little bit more. And it may be just as simple as the chocolatier at the end of the rope block, they have a frozen yogurt cart, and you know, that could have been brought into play. So these are the types of things that Jennifer's really going to wrap her mind around and try to concentrate on to make sure that we are bringing the best value to our citizens. The other aspect is public art and bringing art into our downtown. We do have the public art. We've got quite a number of them already in place. The Bud Form, which is up here in Longley Park. The Fish, which many have been lovingly calling Leroy, down in Anniversary Park. We've got the art wall. The art wall that's in the corridor between New Auburn and downtown, that is probably in need of an update. We've got the Riverwalk storyboards. The Rose will be put in Anniversary Park coming up here, and then we still need to figure out what would go into Festival Plaza. We also need to figure out ways that we can work better with the art community. What can we do to include community little theater in some of our events? You know, we had our holiday parade. When I was down in Roanoke, we had a thing that was called Dickens of a Christmas, and that was where they had guides and different people who were dressed in Charles Dickens era costume, and it was like a big Ebenezer Scrooge type of Christmas event. Well, that's something that possibly could be done in conjunction with Community Little Theater. They have the costumes, and that helps to bring their plays, their entertainment out into the streets. So what can we do to really integrate art into our events? What can we do to integrate art and entertainment into our existing businesses? We've all been in coffee shops where you see an artist is selling some of their pictures. Well, can we do something like that in our downtown? And those are the things that Jennifer is really going to concentrate on. How do we integrate art and entertainment into everything we're doing? While I do think it's great that we have museums and places to go see art, but I think we would like to see, if I understand the strategic plan, that we want to see the downtown just be considered an arts and entertainment center. And so to do that, you have to, everywhere you look, you're surrounded by it. And that is essentially the downtown plan. Does anybody have any questions? Sure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. What I'd like to see you add to maybe your to-do list is maybe help us develop a calendar with a list throughout the year of various events.
Yeah.
Because I think we're losing out to a lot of publications that would, like AAA, they have in the back of their booklet, they have all these destinations, and it tells you when something's going to happen. At one point in time, we were known for the fireworks and the balloon festival.
Right.
We did it jointly with Lewiston. Now it's kind of fizzled out as our part of it, because we put buildings where we used to have balloons.
Yep. And that is, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the first things Jennifer has to do just for herself, to know what we have for events. And then that will help us as well when we go to meet with businesses and community organizations, that we can have more of a sponsorship calendar that goes along with that, so they can, rather than us go last minute and say, hey, can you sponsor this event, that they can see the year ahead and see how these events actually can positively impact their business, and then therefore they want to be a sponsor. So thank you for bringing that up. I hadn't mentioned it, but Jennifer brought it up herself. She said, well, I don't even know what all these events are. So that's one of her first orders of business.
Are there any other questions?
I just take a second to say, this is great work that you guys are doing. Keep it up. Thank you. Jennifer, welcome to Auburn. It's great to have you here. I look forward to any more presentations that you guys have on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a big help on New Year's Eve. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was drinking from the fire hose, so to speak. Well, very good. Thank you very much for the update on this. This does live again on goauburn.me, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
GoAuburn.me, not .com or .gov.
So that's our economic development site that we rolled out in November of 2020, if I remember correctly, along with Jay and Glenn.
2021. The economic development website. It's
There
up.
you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the revitalization plan
It's all
itself.
blending together
Yeah,
after that
yeah.
choose, right? You know, so, no, thank you very much for all this. And with that, we'll be done our workshop. We're gonna take about a 2-minute break, reconvene our regular, city council meeting at 7 o'clock prompt. We'll do our executive session towards the end. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll now call the order of this meeting of January 3rd, 2022. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2022. It's going to take a couple months to get used to saying that. Next on the agenda, or first on the agenda, I should say, we have 4 consent items tonight. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Mr. Mayor?
Second.
I have a motion from Councilor Walker. Do I have a second? Or Councilor Staples, did you?
Yeah, I'd like to have item 3 moved to the regular agenda.
Item 3,
Yes.
changing the date of the second regular council meeting in January from January 24th, 2022 to January 18th due to the holiday. You would like this moved to that will go under new business? Okay, can I have a motion for 3 items, items 1, 2, and 4 to be on the consent agenda for tonight?
Motion to accept.
Got a motion from Councilor Walker, I got a second from Councilor Milks. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? None being, passes 6-0. Next are the minutes of the December 20th, 2021 regular city council meeting. Are there any corrections? None being, I'll entertain a motion at this time to accept the minutes of the December 20, 2021 regular city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Staples, I got a second by Councilor
Pick one.
Walker. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Next, we're going to move on to communications, presentations, and recognition. And the first thing on the agenda tonight is swearing in a new police officer, Mr. Logan Rosignol. Chief Moen and Deputy Chief Kugel, please come up to the dais. Officer Rosignol, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Logan Rosignol, do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And of this state. So long as I shall remain. A citizen thereof. And that I will faithfully discharge. To the best of my abilities. The duties incumbent on me. As patrol officer for the City of Auburn. According to said constitutions. The laws of this state. And ordinances of this city. On my honor, I won't betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or public trust. I'll have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for our actions. I'll uphold the Constitution, community, and agency I serve. Congratulations, Officer Rosignol. Oh, no, the mayor will not be in those photos. But family, please come up and let's take a minute here. And this is a huge day for Auburn and for Officer Rosignol. Let's just take a minute. Family, please come up. Take a picture in front of the DS and the seal here. It'd be wonderful. Get out of the way here.
When we hire new ones. We haven't hired a lot of them. Let's take one of these things. Susie.
Yeah, yeah.
Next, on the under communications, we also have reasons requested from the city council and the planning board's recommendations for residential strip zoning. That's in your packet. Second, next, communications, mayoral appointments. This is also in the packet, but let me just give a little explanation. We do have one standing ad hoc committee, if you would, on the public safety building. I've appointed Councilor Rick Whiting, as well as Councilor Ryan Hawes onto that committee as the 2 city councilor representatives to the 8 residents and staff that are currently on that committee. Second, we're reconvening the mayor's ad hoc committee on committees to meet next Monday at 4:30. I've asked Councilor Moran and Councilor Whiting to be in on that, along with the chair of the planning board, as well as the chair of the Conservation Commission and staff, in order to help facilitate a proposal for you to consider during our next January meeting on the 18th, maybe. So just so you have a heads up on that as well under communications. Next is just straight council communications. I'll just keep going on a couple notes for everybody, then I'll open up to the council for communications on their ends and their wards. First of all, I hope everybody here had a very, very happy holiday and a great start to the new year. Auburn had a great start to the new year. As previously mentioned during workshop, we will be having an after-action review with staff and participants of New Year's Eve Auburn later on this week. I'm in the middle of creating an executive summary. I'd like to have that wrapped up and for you to see and look at during our next January meeting. I will say early indications were it was an extreme success. We can definitely put a point in a minimum attendance of 3,500 due to the wristbands that we gave out. We had 3,500 of them. We gave all of them out to anyone that was over the age of 21. So at a minimum, 3,500 people participated in New Year's Auburn. Just that alone surpassed all of our previous New Year's activities. So it's a fabulous, fabulous event. Even the rain wasn't so bad, as Councilor Walker, who stood up there with me, could attest. So New Year's Eve Auburn was great. Hats off publicly to everybody on staff for doing such an amazing job. And the third time was a charm. It's a testament to the legacy knowledge that our staff has. The fact that we don't have that transient of a staff. They're here, they know it, they understand it, it becomes second nature. And that was a huge assist. The Hilton was booked for the first time ever for New Year's Eve. It was completely booked out. We looked at some of the registrations for guests. They came as far away as from New Hampshire and Massachusetts and Holton, Maine. So they were traveling for this event. So pretty significant. Early indications, again, anecdotal, from the vendors that were there, was that they did more business in one night than they normally do in a month from some of them. I talked to several of them as well, who were saying this surpassed their, it was unbelievable expectations. So all in, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being supportive. Thanks for the media coverage from Channel 13, David Eade, who was there long from 4:30 all the way to midnight, and his camera crew. It was a pretty spectacular event. I think people, even if they weren't there, all over Maine know that we did it, and they know that it was spectacular, and they're remorseful for not going. I'd also like to make a mention on planning board. We have 3 openings right now. The appointment committee should be meeting sometime in January. If we're going to execute the future land use part of the comp plan, the orders, we need to make sure that we have a full, vibrant planning board with the appropriate members. So I would encourage anyone in the community that is interested, especially if they have experience in planning, design, real estate, legal, to get involved and submit an application for the application committee's review as soon as possible. Thirdly and lastly, I'd like to just talk about the legislative session. It's starting in Augusta. Phil Bryan and myself are on the Maine Municipal Association's Legislative Policy Committee, so we'll be looking at bills shortly. We're already looking at some that are coming through. It is an emergency session, so it's a little over 100 bills, a shorter session. So we plan on being up in Augusta on an as-needed basis and working with MMA and our other peers in municipal government around the state in order to make sure that this session goes off well and hopefully with our best interests in mind. That's it for communication. Let's start off on my left, Councilor Staples. Just work around. If you have any communications for the public, please communicate.
Nothing tonight for me.
Councilor Walker.
I just want to report out that New Year's Day was a great success for the Age-Friendly Committee. We had over 50 people show up at the Senior Community Center, and it was a great day. And as always, we had our sponsors that gave us the funding to help us to be able to feed these people and put out a great day for the countdown for the real New Year's Day. Thank you.
Nothing tonight. Nothing.
Happy to report that the Auburn Nordic Ski Association is still functioning. It's down to a couple of trails with the warm weather, but it's still skiable. Just got the report today.
Okay. Councilor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to report on Age Friendly's New Year's Day celebration. Again, like Council Walker said, we had over 51 people. I was personing the check-in desk. I got to interact with people as they came in and to find a seat. And several came up to me throughout the whole meeting saying, "This is fantastic. We're from Lewiston, and none of our activities can compare that they have for our seniors. We come quite often to Auburn, in your senior center through the rec department. There's senior groups, First Auburn, Sacred Heart New Auburn's group. They're all more active and welcoming to other people from not just Auburn. In other words, kudos to our staff, our people, and even the residents and people that attend our events, because we are one big family, and we're an example to others to show that we can get along, we can have fun, and my heart goes out to everybody that works hard to make the events the success that they have been.
Mr. Manager?
I'm all set.
Okay, very good. We're going to go on to new business. First part of new business, is bringing what was on the consent agenda, Order 03-0103-202.
Open session?
I was so excited to do this. I haven't done this in a long time. You're right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is actually open session. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak about any item of business pertaining to the city that is not on tonight's agenda? And if so, please approach the podium. Give us your name and address. Limit your remarks to 3 minutes, please. None being, I'll close this first open session, and we're going to go on to new business. New business, Order 03-0103-2022. Changing the date of the second regular city council meeting in January from January 24th, 2022 to January 18th, 2022, due to the holiday. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion from Councilor Milks. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Staples. I'll open this up to the public for comment. Is there any members of the public that would like to comment on this order? None being, bring it back to the council. Council, I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Staples. He was the one to remove this, please.
I just thought, I saw the other agenda item to make this a permanent change, and I just thought we shouldn't put the cart before the horse and to actually talk about it before we move forward on this, at least, because looking at the calendar, it seems that we'll probably do this at least 4 times this year, I think, if I count right. So I guess I was reading through this, and I've seen past councils do this, and I just wondered why it was made a rule to have it the Monday after, but then it seems that it's
hasn't been followed.
Yeah, usually moved to Tuesday. Looking at I don't know. There's probably lots of reasons to do it both ways. But a couple things that I did notice is that this moving it to Tuesday would usually put it on the same time as a Lewiston council meeting, and that typically will pose a problem with Sun Journal coverage. That's just one item that I saw that was maybe a consideration. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to say, well, why are we doing it this way versus the other way?
You want to start, or you want me to?
Thank you, Mayor. So great questions. I think that we have traditionally always had this the following week on a Monday. What ends up taking place is it puts 2 council meetings back to back 1 week, and then the next the next Monday is the additional council meeting. What ends up taking place when that happens is there's always a really light agenda on one of those meetings, because the staff really ramps up to put the agenda packets together, all the materials. It all gets thrown into one meeting, and then the next meeting, if you go back and take a look at that over history, you're going to see that it's a really light agenda. There's not much there. Keeping that separated allows for staff to be able to put the time into putting the agenda together. Because what ends up taking place when it's back to back, it's all done at the same time, so it all goes out in one of those meetings. This spreads it out, allows staff to be able to do that. And then as far as, you're right, it does coincide with Lewison's meeting date. I think that the way that Sun Journal's been handling it, they're not coming to the meetings. They're viewing them online. Some of them are watching them after the meeting. So I don't know as if that's as much of an issue now that everything's streaming as it was in the past. And you are correct. We do have the ordinance change later in the meeting. In that ordinance, though, it does allow for the council to pick a date. It sets that date, so it's always set, but then allows the council to change the date. That won't change moving forward. The council can still do that. However, we'll just go with what has been traditionally done, which has been that Tuesday after the meeting, in the most recent, in the past, rather.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Start with Councilor Gary, then Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Staples, for bringing this up, because I too kind of wondered, until I finally get to the end of the packet, what was the burning issue that we needed to have another meeting so quick on the 18th that couldn't wait till to the next week? So again, thank you for bringing this up for discussion.
Councilor Whiting?
Yeah, I thank City Manager for the explanation on the spacing, because I think that makes sense. And the only other thing that comes up as a conflict on occasion is planning board, and we could, based on your advice, we could change it if there was a big planning board meeting with a large public attendance. We could modify that particular month if we needed to. So it seems reasonable to do it this way.
Yeah, I think that might be a blue moon situation. It could happen. Planning board's historically second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
So this would be, and our Monday holidays, 90% of the time, I think 4 out of 6
Right.
happen on the first,
Yeah.
except for the one that's coming up on Martin Luther King Day. So yeah, no, I think that, and we do have 2 rooms too.
Right.
So, but yeah, that would be a conflict. As far as the Sun Journal, I just will say, their deadline is running 8 to 8:30 right now, so that's a recent change. So what I've seen and working with them post-fact is they will start spreading out stories about what we discuss over the course of the week. So I think it's less of an issue with the Sun Journal now, A, because of the remoteness, and B, just because of deadline. So there's definitely some interesting things up, but is there any more comment on this? None being, I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? None being? The order passes by a vote of 6-0. Next, we have, excuse me, hold on one second, get back to my spot. Okay, now is our regularly scheduled new business, is order 05-01032022, directing staff to forward the proposed zoning changes to the planning board for consideration and review pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 17, Division 2 of the city ordinances. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second by Councilor Staples. Open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this recommendation? None being, I'll bring it back to council. Council, anybody want to speak on this? Order?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
On item 4, related to the septic requirements in the Lake Auburn watershed, I wonder if the planning board should be given sort of a broader directive that might take more time related to the entire Lake Auburn study, because there are other recommendations in there besides the septic, state septic ordinance recommendation. And so I think that particular item will need more time for review just because of the other recommendations that were made by the consultant. Ideally, we'd have the consultant come back, but I understand the budget's been expended. So I think that one should be if it's not separated from this, at least with the understanding that the planning board would look at the entirety of the report and not just that small piece of it.
Make a suggestion, and this would have to be to address what you're saying, Councilor Whiting, and this would have to be a motion made, of course, and adopted. I think a suggestion on that would be to prioritize points A, B, and C together, and then as point D being the last, or the secondary, in this case, priority. I have emailed I actually emailed staff as well as the chair of the planning board to ask for special meetings in February and March in order to help facilitate this. But I think as we follow and have communication, open communication with the planning board, we can see their progress. And then this will give us a natural pause to come up with maybe a broader scope of Lake Auburn watershed impact. Does that sound?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
So that is, again, that's just an option, but it's up to the body in order to make that motion to proceed on anything on that recommendation. Is there any other comments, questions? Do I have anybody that's willing to make a motion to prioritize points A, B, and C in top priority and points D as secondary priority?
So moved.
I have a Councilor Gary with a motion. I have a second from Councilor Whiting. All those in favor of the motion to amend, please raise your hand. That the order is now amended amended by a vote of 6-0.
I think we have to back out of the first one. We had a first and a second.
No, this is just a motion to amend. So we're good there. Now we don't have to, because
Vote on the full motion.
now we vote, yeah, so it's the full motion as amended, which does have a prioritization. Are you good, Mr. Cousins, Mr. Blay, on that? Okay. And again, I did send that communication, I think, with a couple extra special meetings. And I think we could put this on our agenda to discuss what that could look like. We can move forward on that. Good with that, please?
If I could, we'll work with the chair on extra meetings. I do know that the week of February 20th, there is not staff available for a special meeting. And some of these will require notices to upwards of 2,000 people, so we'll have to be mindful of how we split those up to make sure our public meetings are manageable.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other debate on the motion as amended? None being, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? None being? The order passes 6-0. Next is ordinance 02-01032022, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Section 2-430, Membership, Responsibility, Regulatory Advisory Board. It's a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to move forward.
Motion, Councilor Walker, second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Milks, open this up to the public to speak. Anybody in the public like to speak on this? None being, okay, I'm going to bring it back to the council. Council, there were some typographical errors on this one, or updates. If you see the red line version in your amendment, you'll see that, and I'm going to pull it up for you too here.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I think you took these out of order.
I did. I apologize. I will apologize for that one. I flipped the page looking ahead. I'm going to put it fairly on your shoulders, Councilor Staples.
I'll
for
take that.
taking that one out of consent. I'm going to scratch that, Sue. We're going to back, and I stand corrected on that one. I'm back to actually Auburn's Code of Ordinances, time and place of regular meetings. I apologize. Next is ordinance 01-01032022, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, section 2-58, time and place of regular meetings. It's a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion on this?
Motion to move forward.
Second.
Second.
Second for Councilor Staples. Public, anybody in the public like to speak on this? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any further discussion? Though we did have a lot of it earlier on with the other consent item. None? Ask for a vote then. Roll call vote, please, actually. Madam Clerk?
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes.
Counselor Moran?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Staples?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
Yes.
Okay. Order passes by a vote of 6-0. Next is ordinance 02-01032022, amending Auburn's Code of Ordinances, Section 2-430, Membership, Responsibility, Regulatory Advisory Board. There's a public hearing and first reading. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Staples. I'll open this up to the public. It is a public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any comments, questions, debate?
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is brought back to us because of what was read in the ordinances, that this board is supposed to serve without compensation. And when we voted on this during our last full council, before this one took over, we weren't aware of this. So what this does is now take away that prohibition to allow them to get paid something for their service.
Yes. Correct. Any other questions or comments? None being? Okay. I'm going to ask for a vote. This is, public hearing and first vote on this. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, you was gonna show us something though on the,
Oh, it's right there. If you see the strike through,
oh, okay.
so we're voting on that, okay, to eliminate the without compensation. So that's the change.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Whiting,
Yes.
Counselor Milks,
Yes.
Counselor Morin,
Yes.
Counselor Walker,
Yes.
Counselor Staples,
Yes.
Counselor Gary,
No.
Order passes 5-1, first reading. Next is Order 06-01032022, amending the board and committee appointment policy as recommended by staff. Do I have a motion?
Move forward.
Councilor Walker, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Staples. Open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on this order? None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council? We have obviously the information sheet from the city manager, as well as the strike-throughs and edits and additions. I looked at it. I'll give you my take on this. It cleans it up and make sure the process is moving in an expeditious manner. So I'd like to thank the staff and the city manager for being proactive on this. Any other comments, questions? Councilor Staples?
Yeah, so in here, it says that if you want to reapply for a board or a committee, you no longer have to go through the regular process, but now you submit a notice of interest. Is that just replying to an email to say that, yes, I'd like to continue? Okay.
Still going through the same process, but it's just, you do not need to apply again, fill out the full application. You just have to submit a letter of intent, and then that would go to the appointment committee.
Okay, understood.
No other questions, comments? Okay.
Comment, I think it's great to recognize long-term people, because if they've been on for, a couple of terms, and then they're made to go through this slog of a process, it's sort of a slap. And I think this is a nice refinement, just to sort of thank the people that have put in the hours volunteering for the city, most typically without compensation. And so at least you could just accept that, sort of email or letter of interest versus a full-blown, life history.
Yeah, it is a pretty significant application. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? None being, passes by a vote of 6-0. Second open session of the night. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak to any point of business or issue directly related to the city, which is not on tonight's agenda? If so, please step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. There is no one here, so I'll close the second open session. We have reports from subcommittees to councils. First report. Right now, as obviously we're just gearing up here for the new term, school committee workshop tomorrow, followed by a regular meeting on Wednesday. So that's starting to really pick up. There's going to be a lot of issues to discuss, starting with the budget, moving on to new and latest CDC guidelines. So I'm sure it's going to be a very, very thoughtful and interesting first couple of months here for me, I'm sure. I'll keep you all as posted as possible. I'd like to do some written communication in between or right after meetings so you know in a timely fashion what's going on within the school committee. Turn over to councilors. Councilors, starting on my right, Councilor Gary.
Nothing at the moment.
Counselor Whiting, just feel free to keep moving along, too.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. There will be a meeting Thursday, Lewiston Auburn Municipal Airport. And I'll report back once I know more.
Okay. Make sure planes fly. Counselor Walker?
Yeah, just one report. I'm on the board there at the Waste Energy there in Auburn, and we had a few shutdowns that were out of our control from something breaking down, which kills the power, which is a very expensive shutdown when that happens, and it happened to us about 3 or 4 times in the last month and a half, which runs up there somewhere around $350,000, $400,000. The only good thing about all of that is we had some other good things that came in. We've invested some money, and our invested about $1,500,000 brought us in about half of that loss. So we've done some good things, and of course then crazy things happen that cost us money on the other end. So in the end, I think it will be a wash before we're done. So that means the plant is running healthy, doing good. With Christmas, there has been tons and tons and tons of paper, cardboard, everything coming in there, which gives you an awful lot of waste to burn, but that's why we're there, and we're having fun doing it.
As long as they don't let you shovel the stuff in the incinerator.
No, I
Oh,
don't
good. Counselor Staples?
Nothing tonight. The library committee did not meet in December.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just have a few things. One, as was mentioned earlier, several comments regarding exceptional staff. I just also want to thank our staff. You're seeing a very different presentation that takes place when the staff come up. They've done their homework. They're doing a great job of collecting and trying to anticipate not just what you may be looking for, but also our viewers, our public, when they're watching from home, what would be helpful for them to be more engaged and involved and informed about what's taking place. So I just want to thank our staff as well. Also, coming through the holiday season, obviously we always have public safety staff that are out working, but with that small little storm that we had on Christmas Day, that brought our public works crew out and out on the streets to ensure that our streets were safe. So just our team that was out during the holiday working, as well as the team that was out during New Year's Auburn. So our team just gets out there, they get the job done. Never any complaining, they just do a super job. I just want to thank them and bring that to your attention. Workforce is a challenge for us right now. Just as you're hearing about every other sector of business out there where there's a challenge for workforce, City of Auburn is no different in that. We have several vacancies. Some of our departments, there's a timing with vacancies that we go through a process for testing, like the police department, like the fire department. But we are experiencing some really difficult vacancies right now that we're working through. Just be mindful of that. There's impacts to that. We're ensuring that we have people out. They're covering all our calls for service. But what ends up taking place, that does impact our overtime. So I am working with those department directors as well as the finance director as we monitor that. Usually what ends up taking place is we look to offset some of those overtime increases with our salary decreases that are taking place because of our vacancies. But sometimes that's not just a wash. So we are monitoring that and keeping an eye on that. For people who are looking for employment, please visit our website. We have several positions that are available. If you go to the auburnmaine.gov, take a look at our HR department. There's a tab in there that does have what our current vacancies that we have and what's available. The last one is the COVID update for you. Just as a city, we, like, again, many of you in your own businesses, you're experiencing this. We're adjusting to the CDC changes with return to work. That movement is obviously helpful for us to be able to get our staff back in 50% of that time. So where they normally would have been out quarantined for 10 days, they're coming back in 5 days, wearing a mask, ensuring that they're back. We do work closely with, for those who are new on the council, Matt Fifield is our deputy chief in the fire department. He is our COVID point person. And so every department works through Matt. When there's a positive test or a close contact. We work through that, and that works around the clock because of just the way the city is set up. We have 24/7 service, so every department is experiencing some kind of impact. We probably have close to 15, 20 staff members that are currently out, many that have tested positive or in close contact and under quarantine. That impacts services, that impacts how quick we can return calls to the citizens and get the work done, but other staff are picking up that slack and making sure we get it done, but I want to make sure you and the public are aware of it. That's it, Mayor.
Very good. Next, we have an executive session. Do I have a motion? To discuss economic development matter pursuant to 1 MRSA, Section 405. Do I have a motion?
Motion to move.
Second.
Second for Councilor Staples, motion by Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Okay, we now stand in executive session. This will be the last item for tonight, so we will end our broadcast. There will be no action following this executive session.